Welcome to Babcock Hoops. I'm your host, Calais Goord, and today we're diving firsthand into the 2025 NBA Draft, which is now just days away. From fast-racing prospects to big question marks, we're breaking down every pick in the lottery, 1 through 14. And who better to help us make sense of it all than Babcock Hoops' very own NBA Draft analyst, Matt Babcock. Matt's been courtside all season long, evaluating these players up close. So today, I'm putting him to the hot seat. We'll go pick by pick, explore which prospects might land where, what he's hearing behind the scenes, and unpack the key storylines shaping this year's draft class. Let's get into it. The Dallas Mavericks have the first overall pick. Cooper Flagg is the consensus number 1 overall prospect. Matt, explain why this was Cooper's spot no matter who was making the pick.
You know, he's the top prospect. I mean, he's been the top guy the entire season, and even heading into the season. And he had such a great year at Duke. Led that team, which was a great team, and he really exceeded expectations that were really high. I mean, this guy's a 6'9", very versatile player on both ends of the ball. I think really where he brings a lot of values on the defensive end. He essentially can defend everybody, and offensively, just even though he's not the most dynamic in regards to his tool set, he's productive. He makes a lot happen. He's the number 1 guy, and Dallas is hitting a home run.
What specifically does Flagg need to work on offensively to become elite?
Early in the season, I would have said his big swing skill is outside shooting. But I mean, as the season went on, he kept getting better and better. And I mean, finished the year almost shooting 40% from three on a pretty high volume. So I think that's been addressed on some level or another already. I think the biggest thing, if there's something holding him back, and question marks of him being able to really, truly maximize his potential is being an offensive engine for a team. Is he a guy that you can run a play for at the end of the game and go get you a bucket? So I think just sort of like rounding out his arsenal offensively to be a go-to scorer, I would say that would be the one thing that he needs to address. And let's keep in mind here that this guy's 18 years old. He was supposed to be a senior in high school this year. And so for there to be, some things to work on, it's not anything to worry about. The guy's going to be a really good player day one. But if he were to add to his game, I think it's his offensive arsenal.
Matt, who is your player comp for Cooper Flagg?
Cooper's an interesting one. I mean, I've heard a lot of different names being thrown out there, and I think he's got shades of a number of different great players. Scottie Pippen's one. I mean, I think that, a Hall of Fame player that sort of just checks a lot of boxes. I think they're slightly different, mostly in that Cooper's more of a 4 rather than a true perimeter player. But I see the similarities in the sense of, his upside of, how he can impact the game on both ends of the floor in so many different ways. And another guy that's sort of similar to that is Andrei Kirilenko, who actually would have been probably a better player in today's game of being switchable defensively and, just very well-rounded. And so I think he kind of falls in somewhere in between those two guys. And to me, that's sort of a recipe for a very good player.
The Spurs have the second pick. Babcock Hoops has Dylan Harper at that pick. What do you like about his game?
Yeah, I mean, Dylan, also a freshman this year at Rutgers, is very much a ready-to-go player, even though he's young. He's a jumbo-sized point guard, essentially. He kind of reminds me of a bigger version of Jalen Brunson. And obviously, we've seen the success, Brunson's had in New York. So, I mean, I think Dylan will be the second pick in the draft. And I know San Antonio has come out publicly saying that, he's the guy, or at least it's been rumored that they are set to take him. I wouldn't be surprised to see them listening to calls for trades. They've also got the 14th pick. There's been some rumblings of them being interested in some other players. Khaman Maluach from Duke is one guy that to note there as somebody that the Spurs would like to pair with Wemby. And so, I mean, this is going to be a common theme with each one of these picks. But I do think things are fluid behind the scenes. But anyway, you split it. My full expectation is that Dylan Harper will be the second pick.
The 76ers have the third pick. Matt, who is Philly going to take?
As of right now, I have them taking VJ Edgecombe from Baylor. Obviously, there's all kinds of rumors and rumblings going around what's happening with Ace Bailey from Rutgers, who has not worked out for any teams. My assumption is that Ace and his representation would like to see him slip, presumably to Washington. But right now, VJ Edgecombe's at number 3. But don't be surprised if Philly is looking at trades to move back. I know there's a number of teams looking to move up to get Ace Bailey, and that could be somewhere 3, 4, 5. So as of right now on the mock draft today, VJ Edgecombe is there. But again, things are moving around a lot.
Matt, who does VJ Edgecombe remind you of?
The biggest thing that stands out to me with Edgecombe is his elite athleticism. It's just something you can't teach. And he's further ahead than a lot of us thought he would be as far as his outside shooting. Had a really up and down year. I think a lot of it was how he was used at Baylor. A lot of times I felt like he was stuck in the corner while they let their small guards dominate the ball. But he did show enough flashes of being an on-ball creator that's excited everybody. And from a comparison standpoint, it kind of reminds me of Russell Westbrook. I think at the same phase, Westbrook wasn't really looked at as a traditional point guard, and he really never became one. But you wanted the ball in his hands just because of how dynamic he was as an athlete. He got to his spots. He was so explosive at the rim. And one thing that's really exciting for me is that Edgecombe is going to be a better shooter long term. And honestly, he's probably a better shooter right now. And so I think his upside is significant. Obviously, Westbrook is a former NBA MVP. And so, I think Edgecombe's got a number of things that he needs to do and things that need to kind of go right. But he does have star potential. And so Westbrook is the name that comes to me first.
Matt, are you expecting a lot of moves in the lottery this year?
Based on conversations I'm having with agents and team executives, it does feel like there's more trade chatter than usual. We've had years in the past where there's been a lot of talks and not much happened. As of right now, it does feel like there could be a lot of moves. Pretty much throughout the entire lottery, outside of the number 1 pick with Cooper Flagg. I think starting at 2 all the way to 14, I wouldn't be surprised to see multiple moves.
At number 4, we have the Charlotte Hornets, and Babcock Hoops has picked Ace Bailey. Matt, can you tell us about this pick?
Yeah, so there's a lot of uncertainty of what's going on with Ace Bailey and where he'll end up. I do believe there are a number of teams chasing him, and could be the 3rd pick, the 4th pick, the 5th pick, the 6th pick. I think he's going to be somewhere in there. So on the mock draft today, I have him going number 4. I'm not overly confident he'll end up in Charlotte, but I do think there is a strong possibility, as I mentioned, that he'll be 3, 4, or 5. And so I'm going with number 4 here. It's been rumored that Charlotte is interested in Knueppel. I could see that being the case. I have a hard time believing they'll use the 4th pick to take him. I think very realistically it could be a trade to move back to take him. And that's essentially what I have projected right now, is them moving back to 8 and taking Knueppel at 8.
Let's go back to Ace Bailey for a minute. Matt, what were you hearing about his lack of individual team workouts?
It seems as if his representation is playing games. They're trying to manipulate things. My best bet is that they're trying to get him to Washington, and it sounds like there's mutual interest there. I still think one of these teams, 3, 4, or 5, would likely to say screw it and take him anyway. And so that's what I'm betting on. But there is a lot of action behind the scenes as far as trying to pinpoint exactly what's going on, what's the intention of Ace and his crew, and what teams would be willing to do in regards to pulling the trigger, even though they're not getting all the information that they need and want.
Matt, who's your player comp for Ace Bailey?
Ace Bailey's an interesting one. I think he's a little bit more of a project, but he's got some skills that you really can't teach. And his tough shot making ability is incredible. He's hitting fadeaways that kind of remind me of like a Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady. Not that necessarily those are his comps, but that part of his game, really is exciting. And I think he falls somewhere in there of like being kind of like a Paul George type player. I do think he's got a long ways to go to get to that point and actually maximize his potential. But his potential is sky high.
And at number 5, we have the Utah Jazz. We picked Trey Johnson. Matt, can you tell us about this pick?
Yeah, Utah. They've got new leadership with Austin Ainge coming in, and they're rebuilding, they're retooling, and they've got 2 young studs in Isaiah Collier and Keontae George. Bringing in Trey Johnson is another guard, but more of an off-ball scorer. And this guy is just a very talented player. Ultimate alpha dog type mentality. He's one of these guys that he's not showing up to make friends. He's there for one reason only, to get buckets, and he's extremely good at it. And so I think Utah could add, a dynamic, talented scorer like Trey as they continue to build out the roster.
At number 6, we have the Wizards with Khaman Maluach. Matt, tell us about this one.
Yeah, 6 is an interesting pick. I mean, obviously, there's all the uncertainty with what happens ahead of them. And there are rumors that they're interested in Ace Bailey. So, I mean, they could be a team to move up to get him. Obviously, I'm sure they're hoping he slips to 6. I personally see it to be unlikely. And so in the event that Ace Bailey is not there and they are picking at 6, I think they will be looking at Khaman Maluach, who's a big-bodied center, sort of defensive anchor that they could pair with Alex Sarr, who I've heard they like the idea of playing 2 bigs with Alex Sarr being a stretch 4 more than just a penciled-in 5. The other guy would be Jeremiah Fears from Oklahoma, on-ball creator. In this case, I'm not real sure what they're going to do, but I'm going with Maluach at 6.
Speaking of Jeremiah Fears, at number 7, we have the New Orleans Pelicans. Can you tell us why you picked Jeremiah for number 7?
Another team with new leadership with Joe Dumars and Troy Weaver, and they're going to look to retool their roster as well. And Jeremiah Fears at 7 would just be a slam dunk pick to me. He's somebody that I would consider as high as number 4. Another guy similar to cooperflagg who reclassified up. Was a freshman in college this year, was supposed to be a senior in high school. Just a very talented, dynamic point guard that has star potential. So getting a player like this at 7 would be a great pickup for Joe Dumars and the Pelicans.
And at number 8, we have the Nets. Who's your pick?
Yeah, I went with Knueppel here. I mean, there's been some rumblings he can go as high as 4 to Charlotte. But as I mentioned before, I could see there being a number of trades. And I have a hard time believing that Con will actually be a top 5 pick. I see him more of the mid lottery, late lottery. And so at 8, I do think this would be a good pick. It's just whether it's going to be Brooklyn's pick or not. I think it is still pending.
At number 9, we have the Raptors. Who are we picking for this one?
Well, in our mock draft this morning, I put Noah Essengue. However, I mean, I keep bringing up the common theme here is trade rumors. In number 9, I do think is potentially on the table. I've heard rumors of things like Oklahoma City looking to move up to get a big man, perhaps Derik Queen from Maryland or Joan Beringer. But as of right now, I've got Noah Essengue going to Toronto. But this pick easily could be on the move.
And at number 10, we have the Suns with Derik Queen. Why did you pick Derik for number 10?
Yeah, things are pretty fluid here too. Phoenix is a team that I've heard, even though they just made the trade to pick up this pick, I think they're still wheeling and dealing. If they do stay this pick, it sounds like they're looking at some big men. I've heard Derik Queen's name in the mix, Asa Newell from Georgia, perhaps Collin Murray-Boyles. We'll see. Everything is pretty fluid right now, but Derik Queen would be a nice fit. They've got a lot of talent on the perimeter. I think getting a young big guy like Derik would give them a building block moving forward.
And an interesting pick for number 11. Why did you pick Carter Bryant for Portland?
Yeah, Carter Bryant from Arizona has been a really interesting prospect this year. Really didn't play that big a role at Arizona, especially early in the season, and just kept getting better and better. And head coach Tommy Lloyd used him more and more. And the pre-draft process has helped him too. I mean, he's got great measurables. He's an extremely athletic player, really good kid. Checks a lot of boxes. I mean, having the foresight of what he'll be in a few years is probably a starting wing that might even be big enough to play some hybrid forward. And so, I mean, with Portland, looking to add to their long-term roster construction, fits what they're doing with Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe and Donovan Cleveland in the front court. I just like this pick. There's been rumor there's interest here, and just went with Carter Bryant because I think it's a great fit.
Are there any current NBA stars that we should be looking at to keep an eye on this season?
Yeah, I think there's so much trade chatter going right now. I don't think Giannis is going to get moved at the moment. I think this is something that could happen down the road. My expectation is that he'll be in Milwaukee next season. But a couple names that they do come up quite a bit in these behind the scenes conversations are R.J. Barrett from Toronto and Cam Johnson in Brooklyn. It does seem like Toronto and Brooklyn are looking to make some moves. Who knows? Maybe it's moves with each other. So we'll see. It feels like there's 1,000 different hypothetical trades being discussed at the moment. I'm personally, from a fan standpoint, I'm looking forward to see how this unfolds, because it does seem like there could be some fireworks tomorrow.
At number 12, we have the Bulls with Collin Murray-Boyles. Matt, why did we pick Collin?
I'm not real certain on this pick. I think, with 12, there's a number of names that have been thrown around. It does seem like, a good chance that they would bring in a big guy, whether it be Derik Queen, Asa Newell, Joan Beringer, or Collin Murray-Boyles, which is who I went with. Fits what they're doing as far as adding somebody to their front court. I think they've got room to add some depth. And so Collin Murray-Boyles is a name that has been attached to this pick. And that's just what I decided to do.
And at number 13, we have the Atlanta Hawks. Who are we going for?
Atlanta's got a number of young pieces moving forward, and I think they just need to figure out guys that can coexist with the players they have in place and the timeline that they're on. Joan Beringer is 18 years old, 6'11", 7 foot guy that's really got a lot of upside. Sort of reminds me of maybe even more athletic Joakim Noah from an upside comp standpoint. And so adding to this roster gives them something they don't have right now. Their main big guys in Essengue, who's a terrific player, but more of a 4-5 undersized low post scorer. Beringer would give them a long mobile big with significant upside, especially on the defensive end.
At number 14, we have the Spurs with Asa Newell. Matt, tell us about this pick.
Yeah, Asa seems to have a pretty wide range right now. I mean, I think he's being considered with a few picks in the top 10. In the early teens, but it could even slip to the late teens, early 20s. But at 14, I mean, to me, he's somebody that I think would give the Spurs, some upside. Somebody you can pair with Victor Wembanyama long term. I think Asa has got a chance of being a very good player. 6'9", 6'9" or 6'10", a very mobile athlete, natural skill set, and he's got a potential of being a decent outside shooter. And so I think at 14, he'd be a high value pick. And I think he's going to be considered by a number of these teams in that range. And so, similar type thing, that there's a lot of uncertainty with all of these picks. But Asa, would be a good selection for the Spurs.
Is the presence of NIL money in college diluting the draft pool?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's so many guys that didn't even enter the draft to start the process because they decided to go back to school and cash in on the NIL bag. And then a number of guys that pulled out that probably would have stayed in the draft in previous years. And so, yeah, the depth of this draft is not great. I really like it. The top 20, first round, early second round. But the drop off gets pretty dramatic, once we get into the mid second round. I'm expecting a lot of these guys getting drafted to get two-way contracts. The one good thing, though, is I do think over time that cycle will catch up and guys will have exhausted their college eligibility, which will lead to more depth in future drafts. But as of right now, made a dramatic difference in the player pool.
The NBA draft starts Wednesday night. Babcock Hoops will be back Friday with a recap of both rounds. Head over to babcockhoops.com for the latest.